I'm James Turk. I'm a director of the Gold Money Foundation. And I'm here today with an old friend, Dr. Lawrence Parks, who's the executive director of the Foundation for Advancement of Monetary Education. Information about his organization can be found at FAME, FAME.org. Larry, it's a real pleasure to speak with you today.
I want to see you.
I want to talk to you about FAME. You've been doing this now for 20 years?
I guess it's 17 years. We started this in 1995. I can't believe it's so long ago.
Time flies when you're having fun.
I guess. So I'm really in my 5th career now with FAME. And I formed it in order to educate folks about the benefits of an honest monetary system and the perils of irredeemable paper ticket money. And the strategy is full disclosure and no coercion. Full disclosure about the monetary system, about which people know very little. And the coercion, of course, is the legal tender. We were never promoting gold per se. The notion was that when all the facts got out, when people saw what this was about, the only alternative was gold.
Yeah. So when you talk about full disclosure, you're referring to the banking system and fractional reserve banking?
The whole thing. I mean, all the definitions, all of the important concepts, by the way, have been taken out of the textbooks. I mean, there was a time when everybody in the country knew about legal tender, for example. Thomas Paine, so-called the father of the revolution in Common Sense, wrote Common Sense. He wrote that anyone who proposed legal tender should be put to death. And that's how strongly people felt about it. Today, nobody even knows what it is. All the important concepts about why societies all over the planet from the 8th century in China chose gold as money, no one has any idea. And the amount of misinformation and disinformation about the monetary system is off the scale. And foremost, the definition, you know, what our money is, what a dollar is, all of that's been misrepresented to people. And so one of the lines that I have is that the system that we have now is unstable. And I'm going to be talking about this evening. We're at the CMRE dinner. And the timing of when this blows up is really a function of disclosure.
Do you want to give us a little bit of a preview of what you're going to be speaking about tonight?
Yeah, sure. So the first point has to do with the approach to the monetary issue, to the money issue. And there are at least 4. One is the constitutional approach, and this is what Dr. Edward Vieira speaks about. He's a constitutional attorney, and he makes the case, not beyond a reasonable doubt, but beyond doubt, that the system we have now is not in conformity with the Constitution. Another approach, which I'm going to speak about this evening, is what I call the systems approach. I'll talk about that more in just a moment. Another approach is simple honesty, to describe the dishonesty in the system. And a 4th approach is based on the empirical evidence. When you look at what's happened over history, you see the paper money systems always blow up. So my training, as you may recall, was in engineering science. Operations research, but the thrust of what I worked on in those early days was what they called systems analysis. And the guy who founded systems analysis, his name was J.W. Forrester. He's a very brilliant electrical engineer from MIT, made a name for himself during World War II in the area of servo mechanisms. And the kind of problems that systems dynamics approaches are ones that are time variant, as opposed to the models, say, that Keynesian economics approaches, where they assume static models. And very importantly, they look at the area of feedback, nonlinearity. And the models that you have from Keynesian economics, these are linear models. And there are 2 important lessons that come out of systems dynamics. One is that as the delays in the system decrease, the volatility increases. I'll relate this to gold in just a second. But the more important one, which I'm going to emphasize tonight, is that if you don't have a self-correcting mechanism, what they call a negative feedback loop, the system blows up. So any system that doesn't have a self-correcting mechanism blows up. Everybody watching this video is familiar, for example, with hot water heating. And you have radiators, and every radiator has an escape valve.
Yeah, so there's too much steam or heat in there.
Right. So the idea is as the steam heats up and whatnot, if there was no escape valve, you'd blow your pipes. Mm-hmm. So the escape valve is really the self-correcting mechanism. In your body, you have many self-correcting mechanisms. So for example, if you start running and you get out of breath, you have to stop because you're depleting the oxygen in your red blood cells. If you didn't stop, you'd have a stroke or something. And so that's a self-correcting mechanism. Another example is that if you get some kind of disease or infection, the white blood corpuscles spring into action. That's another self-correcting mechanism. In the monetary system, the self-correcting mechanism up until August 15th, 1971, was that some of the money being created out of nothing was exchangeable for gold by foreign central banks and foreign governments at the rate of $35 an ounce. And after President Nixon defaulted temporarily, he said, on this sovereign promise, now the self-correcting mechanism was gone, and what you've had and will continue to have is an explosion in debt, leverage, and the money supply.
And ultimately the system blowing up by the dollar collapsing?
Exactly. And one of the points I make is that all prices are ratios. And if you look at, people talk about gold, they say, well, how high can it go? Can it go, it's 1,500 today, could it go to 2,000 or 4,000 or 10,000? That is the wrong question. If you look at prices in terms of gold, and I know you've done this once for oil, the real way to look at it is how low can the dollar go? I have a chart that shows that, and the answer is it can go to zero.
Like so many other fiat currencies before it.
Like every fiat currency before, I mean, no exceptions. And the retort that you get from people, in the monetary authorities or people in the media is that somehow they wouldn't let that happen. The implication is that somehow the authorities can control this. This is like Bernanke, our Fed chairman, in an interview about inflation. He said he was 100% certain he could contain that. I mean, that's ridiculous. I have an image of Alan Greenspan testifying before Congress in 2008, where he says he was shocked, at what happened. And the guy who really let the cat out of the bag was Hank Paulson in his book, I think it's called On the Brink. Like in 24 places, he says he was stunned, unexpected, didn't know what was happening. And the slide I have for tonight, he says, we didn't understand what was going on. We were just doing it by the seat of our pants. So the fact is, they're not in control at all. And the way to protect yourself, the best way, the most efficient way to protect yourself is with gold. There are other ways, but nothing's better than gold, because gold minimizes the buy-sell spread, and you have a 5,000-year, 24/7 history of being able to market your gold.